What happens when we try to treat pain as a problem to erase instead of a message to decode? If no one else had an opinion on you, how would your life look like? And what does it cost you every day to live a life which is not in alignment with your true self? I'm Catherine, and I invite you today on this episode of Spero Podcast to deep dive with me and my guest Jennah into some quiet truths that we often might want to avoid. Yet, we will still have to face them at some point in order to live a life in alignment with our own self. Today's guest is a woman of remarkable depth, resilience, and intention. I welcome Jennah Louise today in the studio with me. She has a background in international politics and law, a certification to be a coach for entrepreneurs. She is also a host for a podcast called To Be Human, where she makes space for vulnerable conversations. And moreover, she has also a relationship with high endurance challenges. She completed multiple 100 plus kilometers ultramarathons and climbed mountains which exceed 5,000 meters. Hi, Jennah. Welcome to Spero Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. And I feel like since you're here, the energy in the room shifted.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
I can feel your positive energy. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. You just gave me lots of goosebumps. Thank you. It's beautiful. Thank you.
I was mentioning about you going to ultramarathons, climbing mountains, and having this relation with extreme endurance challenges. And I think these type of challenges are often not only physical, but they are like a mirror of our psychological and emotional landscape. And I would like to know what did these challenges teach you about yourself, about your mind, not only about your body, and what keeps you going when you are in so much pain? And to which purpose, higher purpose, you connect to during these times?
Beautiful. Thank you for those lovely questions. For me personally, it's all about giving myself an opportunity to meet who I am when everything is stripped down.
Wow.
I feel like goosebumps again. Ever since I've been sitting with you, I've been getting so many goosebumps as well. We're on the same frequency.
Yes, energy exchange here is real.
It's real. I feel like we live, a lot of us, particularly in the West, a very comfortable life. And I found through comfort, for me, came a lack of fulfillment and somewhat a depressive underlying feeling. And I found when I began to immerse myself in these challenges that it began to awaken a part of me that was lying dormant. And by virtue of that, I felt like more of that underlying depressive state and that lack of fulfillment was lifted. And so it made me really curious. And so as I continued to explore these adventures and endurance experiences, what I've come to find is by consciously and with intention immersing myself in these experiences to strip me down bare and naked psychologically and somewhat physically, is to be able to give myself an opportunity to be able to really meet me. I have this huge passion about teaching about us living a life, particularly for the first part of our life, in a deep conditioned state. You know, we live in a way that we were brought up by our parents and our teachers and our peers and society as a whole. And I think that's where a lot of our lack of fulfillment, depression, and somewhat anxiety comes from. And so what I've found is by immersing myself in these experiences, again, it gives us this opportunity to be able to strip all of that back and be able to give us an opportunity to really face who we are. And in those moments I've found, particularly with these adventures and endurance pursuits, there always is a time where I want to give up. And I reframed those moments for myself to be able to say to myself, this is when we're just getting started. And for me, I'm very passionate about that because that's when I get to know the real me. That's when I get to understand that the limitations that I perceive within myself are not true, just as much as the conditioned aspect of who I am is. And I'm able to really begin to lean in and explore who I am in my fundamental state and energy. I believe that everyone has a unique energetic signature in this life. And by those experiences, I feel like it's like this accelerated experience to be able to connect with that. And so that's part of what really pulls me to these experiences is being able to be stripped raw, being able to really meet who I am and be able to see the person that I am in whether I'm courageous and brave enough to be able to face myself in this. Because when you're stripped down like that, there is a lot of emotions, I feel like trapped energy. There is stuff that comes up. And in those moments, we're asked to be able to process it. And we're able to see, are we the person that's courageous and brave enough to face it and process it? Or are we the type of person that's going to suppress it again or possibly quit? And I found throughout these experiences, I've quit once in my life in an ultramarathon. It was my first ultramarathon in the middle of Australia.
And what happened?
It was a beautiful experience because with that intention, and this is where I differ a little bit from I think most people, but I would really encourage to be able to do this, particularly for high achievers, which I would identify as myself as, and I think you would as well, is that we're very used to winning, achieving, meeting our goals. We're very good at that. And so in that experience, I set myself into this situation that I was unsure whether I could meet it. It was a 10-day ultramarathon. You had to carry 10 kilos on your back. It was 520 kilometers in the middle of the desert in Australia. First ultramarathon, and I had a few months to train. I had a feeling I wouldn't make it, but there was something that excited me about that because I'd never in my life had that experience of setting myself something and not being able to meet it. And I wanted to know what that felt like. I wanted to know who I was in that moment of being like, I have given everything and I cannot take one more step. And that's what happened. I ended up falling and getting a bit injured and pursuing for a couple more days, but I got to the point, it was like 45 degrees. And I remember just being so hot in the day and I was like sort of limping. And I just thought that there was still, I think, 3 or 4 more days to go. And I thought, I can't go on. I just don't have it within me. And I felt alivened in that moment because I was like, this is what I'm here for, to be able to see where are my actual limitations rather than I believe that most of us, we set these goals, but they're still within a slight comfort. We still kind of know that we're going to be able to meet them. And so through that experience, it was amazing to be able to say, okay, this is my limit right now. And in reflection, I know that if I were to go, that was 5 years ago, if I were to go back to that now and do that again, I know through my experiences post that, I would have been able to go further. I would have had a stronger and more resilient mindset. And that's what's beautiful about these experiences is that you grow through them. And I think it's not only applied to the adventure and the endurance, but it has made me so much of a more stronger and resilient person in my everyday life because I've had those hard experiences. And I think by virtue of living, we have hard experiences. You and I were just joking before pressing record that there's breakdown to breakthrough moments, which we can speak about. But I also think it's important to be able to make these conscious choices. And for me, it's through adventure and endurance to be able to really challenge ourselves in a conscious way, not just wait for life to sort of smack us across the head. And so those experiences have been able to help me be more resilient in those other moments where life is like, right now, we're going to put you in a situation where it's going to be deep and dark and difficult. But through those experiences, I've learned certain things to be able to help me get through that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And with all this international experience you have, and you were mentoring entrepreneurs, and you have also experience in international politics and law.
Yeah. So you did do your study.
Yes, I did.
Not many people mention this.
I have my sources.
Yeah.
But you are such a complex person and you achieved so many things. When was the point, like the turning point, when you started living your own truth? How was this process for you, and what did it change for you after you start being more in touch with yourself?
It's certainly been an evolution. I do believe the defining moment that I remember is I had studied law, politics, and international relations, and was offered a junior lawyer position. And in Australia at that time, it was very hard to get these positions. And I ended up turning it down. And I realized in that moment, if I turn this down, then what have I done this all for? What am I doing? And I had seeds of that in my graduation day as well. I was standing there being like, I didn't think about when I would graduate, what would happen. I was just going through the process of being in university. And so through that experience, I ended up actually meeting a life coach, and I went and booked a session with them. I would say they weren't the best approach for me, but they asked a question that I think set this personal evolution reflection for me in terms of living my own truth. They said to me, "Who are you?" Very simple question. But in that moment, something happened for me. And I thought in that moment, which I still remember to this day, I was 27. I'm 36 now, so 9 years ago. I thought, well, I am who I am. Who else would I be if I were not to be me? And I sat there at that point as a highly anxious, depressed person. I had an eating disorder. Things were not going well. And I thought, there's something in that question and that answer, because I don't believe that if I was truly living to who I am, fundamentally at the core of why I'm here and what I'm made up of, I would be experiencing these things and feeling this way. And so it wasn't long after that I quit my job. I broke up with my boyfriend at the time. Anything that I was attached to. I just thought,
so decluttering,
big
and
reset.
detachment.
Big reset. Yeah. And
I think it's very brave to take that step.
It's big. And I think that's part of what I love about the mentorship that I do, because I do believe that God has given me a very natural sense of courage. And so as difficult and painful as a lot of that was, I knew that it was true. I knew, and there's a default of a natural sense of courage and bravery that comes with that I feel like this is what I obviously mentor in. And so I feel like through that, it sort of sent me on this trajectory of coming to understand, well, what does it mean to be me? What does it mean to be true to me? And honestly, I feel like it has taken me almost a decade to truly understand what that means. I feel like I only really, really came to understand what that meant last year. I went through a pretty significant dark night of the soul, which we can get into, because I do believe these moments that happen to us are of service to us. And through that, I came to really, really understand how to navigate living a life that is true to me, and the power and courage and stability and all these beautiful fulfillment, all these beautiful feelings, connection that can come with living a life that's true to me.
This brings into my mind the quote from Nietzsche, "Become who you are," which sounds simple at first, yet it is so intricate, and I think there are so many layers here. And it refers to a lifelong process of becoming who we truly are. Because I think it's a transformative process, which it's never ending as long as we are on this earth.
Yeah.
What do you think we would be if we would live without fear, without expectations or meeting the expectations from others, without this limitation?
Beautiful. It's something I'm very passionate about.
Then
It is the thing that I live for and love to guide people on. Living a life that is true to you, which by virtue of doing that is despite fear and living to other people's expectations and their sense of limitation, is one that is incredibly meaningful and also is challenging. It can be dark. It can be difficult. And that's why the importance of belief is so important in terms of certainty throughout all of this. Because I do believe that many people, when they think about living a life that is true to them, I believe they make the mistake of thinking, well, the signs will be, it will be easy, it will be flowing, I will be happy every day.
Definitely not be like that.
It would definitely not be like that. And so in bringing it together, I feel like at the fundamental core where you start is understanding that to live a life true to you is to be able to connect with a deeper sense of truth within you. I feel like the closest word to that would be intuition. I'm very energetically sensitive, and I'm bringing that more and more into my work. I experience people and myself as like a unique energetic signature that moves through all of us. And I say congruence is power. And so my role in my mentorship and the way that I personally live my life is continually tapping into how to create this line that is in flow and not fragmented, because I believe fragmentation is a weakness. So it's being able to first connect with that feeling. Where the difficulty arises within that is the conditioning that I spoke to, is that many of us don't quite understand and also are not, I don't want to say not brave. We don't quite yet understand the permission that is required to be able to live a life that is true for us. When we're conditioned, the conditioning is from other people that you speak to. And so we've lived our life very used to asking for other people's opinions, making sure that's okay with this person. Is that okay? Yes, no, okay, I will just continually keep creating my life and myself to whoever is around me at the time that I care in their sense of authority. And so being able to undo that is essentially changing the way that you look at life, that you've experienced life, your sense of identity, and the way that you relate to other people. And so the fundamental core of this is being able to know what that connection is with that feeling and then be able to subtly live for it. Obviously, in my mentorship, I can help people make larger changes that I speak to, changing careers, relationships, their lifestyle. But I would suggest as an easy marker to start with is just keep checking in with yourself momentarily throughout the day. What is the next right move? And so when you speak about caring about other people's expectations and sense of limitation and the isolation that can come from that, it's about making these smaller choices and being able to build a sense of confidence. I call it like a metaphorical backbone. That's my goal with my clients. Develop that metaphorical backbone through the choices that you make slowly about getting to know who you truly are through this feeling of intuition that runs through you. And once you continue to do that, in my life, what I've experienced is the more that you begin to trust yourself, the more or the less that you will care about other people's opinions, because you begin to get really seated in who you are. And when you begin to trust yourself in that way, you keep checking in. And if there's something that feels true for you, that may separate you from people that normally you would care about, there's a way in which you can deliver and work with that. And I think that's also a very important lesson, is like sometimes in the integration process, people sort of go from like caring what people think to like, you know, excuse my language, but like a fuck you attitude, right? And that's the integration process, is like we kind of go from here to like 100.
Didn't see that coming.
And then we move ourselves sort of back into a more centered approach. And so with me, there can be somewhat of a chaos that comes with that. It's okay, you know, that's part of the journey. But with me, if I guide my clients, it's like, okay, let's just actually understand, how can we, you know, I put it under the auspice of saying no with love. Like, how can we begin to learn to disagree with someone or say no to someone, but still be able to maintain a sense of connection with them? Because that's our deepest fear, is that if we live true to us, that we separate ourselves from others.
Yes, and I would like to know, like, how should we face this fear of saying no to others and being brave enough to choose yourself?
Yes.
And on the other side, still we are social creatures.
Yeah.
So a lot of who we are is shaped by our social environment.
Yes.
So how can we integrate also this part when trying to live our own truth?
So this is where I may be more extreme than other people. I believe that to make it easier for us, by virtue of being human and having a nervous system that can get activated, is, again, those smaller choices that we begin to make in our life to build that sense of trust and build that metaphorical backbone. That makes it easier on the nervous system. The more extreme version of how I teach is when you are living true to you, as close and as pure to 100% as you can. This does not matter. The consequences do not matter. Because part of your truth, I've found, is that it's motivated by a deeper sense of trust and love. And so this is how I frame it. You live true to you if, by virtue of doing that, the consequences are that you separate yourself from people. I call it, let the pieces fall as they may. Let them fall. Because my belief in this life is that this experience is about us and us living our truth. It's not about selling out our authenticity for human connection. The most important connection that you can have in your life is the connection that you have with yourself. And I do believe that is a huge lesson, because I believe by virtue of growing up and being conditioned, we've learned the opposite. And so it's a coming home. And so it's about being able to really live from that. And that's why I say then there's certain nuanced lessons that come with that. It's like being able to say no. It's not a no, fuck you. It's a no, I'm standing in my truth, and I'm going to communicate in a way that if my goal is to maintain connection, I'll say it in a way that I believe is true to me, but also true to maintaining that connection. But I can't control the other person's reaction. And so if they react in a way that I didn't think they would, which consequences in separation or conflict, let the pieces fall as they may, because that is their own experience of life. That's their, and this is where my spiritual path and preferences come in, is that that's their life, and their reaction or sense of conflict is something that then life is showing them to be able to be present to. But it's not my domain to have to control that, because then I'm abandoning myself to be able to make sure that person's okay, when self-abandonment doesn't result in me being okay. So it's keep connecting with self, keep connecting with that sense of truth, and being able to hold the space that will mean things will fall away, including people. And there may be, in my experience, a very deep sense of grief that comes with that. But that's part of the process, is being able to feel into it. Living your sense of truth doesn't mean, oh, well, I've lost that person in my life. It's being able to experience it by virtue of being human. But you don't change yourself because you don't want that to happen, because that's going against your own sense of truth. And so that's like really pivotal to understand, is that the most important thing in this life is for you to live true to you through that sense of intuition as much as you can. And whatever the consequences are of that, they're the consequences of that. But then you keep connecting with you. So if there's a separation and conflict with that person, you connect with you. Okay, what is the next right move for me? What feels true for me in this moment? Is it to attempt in coming back into connection with this person? Or is it stepping away and being able to experience the grief or the hardship or the hurt that comes with experiencing that separation? And then you keep doing that throughout your life. There will be a sense of loss, but what I've realized is life doesn't just take everything away. You begin to, we spoke about energy and frequency at the start, you begin to magnetize people that are more on that level.
There is always an exchange in life.
Yes, always.
And the law of compensation. Like if you lose something, there will be something else waiting for you on the other side.
And that's where that trust comes in. And I think that's really important. And I think that that's one of the hardest experiences that I've had, is that in those moments that I live really true to me and things may fall away, there is a somewhat human expectation of like, well, where's the thing? I live true to me. I've lost this. Where's my reward?
Like I'm here.
Like,
universe.
Come on, God. Yeah,
Come on.
God in universe. I did the thing. What I've learned is that at times there is a significant delay in what comes back into your life, because part of that lesson is God and the universe is not a genie. It's here to serve you. And part of that is sometimes to be able to sit and trust in the uncertainty without knowing what's going to be delivered to you.
This is so touching and so beautiful. And I have to say, I have sometimes struggles to just let myself surrender and trust. Even if at cognitive level, I realize this, and emotionally, I realize it as well, partially, but there are moments in life when I'm like, I want things to happen in my way because it's what I think will suit me best.
Yeah.
But God has other plans. And I think this is also a process of trusting.
It's and you're very right. It's a process, and a process takes time. And I think the more that you live true to that, over time, over years, you begin to realize how the universe works. And that's where I can have more patience for trust. But the surrender that you speak about, I completely understand. What I've learned about surrender that has helped me is that when I really get to that moment where I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. I can't hold on to any more of this. I'm afraid, I'm frustrated, I'm scared.
There is anxiety, there might be depression.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you reach like rock bottom, and then you realize it has a basement as well.
True. I'm here. Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, no.
Absolutely. And what has helped me is in those moments, I physically get down on my knees. I get down on my knees and I hand it over. And I just say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to live in the illusion that my sense of control, my need to control, is doing anything right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what is actually in the power and progression, acceleration of what we desire is in that trust element that comes down to surrender. That for me is getting on my knees and handing it all over. And handing it all over can be very messy. It can be a deep howl of a crying. But what I've found is that when you energetically lean into handing it all over, there is a sense of liberation that can come from that. And I feel like that is very close to what you speak to about that sort of breakdown moment where it's like life is pushing you down into the basement sometimes for you to get the lesson that you don't have to control everything. And that the lesson is actually that in being able to fully surrender in those moments, you still realize that you're alive and that you've survived. And there's a beautiful clarity, I feel, that comes from just not giving it up, just giving it over. And
I
then
love that.
being able to get up off the floor after a moment like that, breathe into yourself and be like, okay. And for me, you know, I may spend the rest of the day or the next few days with a pact and commitment to myself that just for this time, I'm going to commit to not looping in my mind about how to get something or how to figure out. I always say to my good friends, you know, when they talk to me and they say, I'm trying to figure out. And I said, don't cuss in my house. You can swear all you like. But if you say trying to figure out to me, we are not that powerless. I feel like trying to figure out is one of the worst energies you could live your life in. And I feel like most of us are doing it.
Mm.
And any time that I use that language or think that way, I'm like, I'm off track. Let it go for today. Let it go for today and be present and live my life and live in flow and realize my day is no different whether I try to figure out today or I surrender in flow for a moment and give myself a break, other than the fact that I have eliminated that sense of stress and pressure from me. And I think for high achievers, that is so important to experience because I think for most of us, we have lived our life like that. And what I've found, and this is where sort of more of the magic and synchronicity is happen, that when people let it go, generally something will happen. The clarity will come. They'll get the call. They'll get the email. There's something when they make space for something to come into their life rather than pushing outwards in this trying to figure out energy, that life will deliver. And it is very much that cliche understanding of like life has a grander plan than you could ever imagine. And that's a very core belief that I live to, is like I've done the high achieving thing and the planning thing, and I've studied law and politics for 5 years, and that did shit. Like other than I realized that I lived a very conditioned life that made me very unhappy and fulfilled. Now I'm on the beautiful roller coaster. I'm playing the game of life, and it's a co-creation relationship between me and God and the universe. And yes, I feel like I, know who I am to an extent, and I have things that I enjoy and passionate about that I'm good at. And also, I also am excited and trusting that God and the universe has a path for me that I can't plan. And that when things come into my life that I can't control, I wholly believe, and this has been a huge game changer for me in terms of alleviating any sense of anxiety or depression, is just understanding that anything that comes into my life that I can't control is of service to me. And it's on me to be able to understand what that service is. And that's been everything to me, because I still see people that live that life, the life happens to them. And they get stuck, they get anxious, depressed, they have a victim energy. And in my belief, it's just no way to live. It's no way to live. And
maybe this is also, sorry for this, but I was just thinking that maybe this is also in a way a stoic approach, that if you cannot control something and you cannot do something about it to change a certain situation, you just need to accept it and take it as it is.
Very stoic approach, because really, I mean, logically we can understand this, right? It's like if something happens, why are you spending your time upset that something different didn't happen? It's so meaningless. And it's only hurting yourself. So it's like that deep acceptance is so important, And then where the spirituality or more religious aspect for me comes in is, and also post-acceptance is, what is of service to me in this moment? And what I believe in, coming back to the idea of living true to your own life and who you are and what you're here to do through this unique energetic signature, is that's just life redirecting you back. There is some aspect in your life that life's saying, hey, you're a little bit fragmented, you're a little bit off path, or a lot. Here is something in your life to be able to redirect you. And as I suggested, I treat it like a game now. Like, okay, what's the lesson? Okay, I'm going to adapt. I'm going to come back into alignment. I'm going to live my life, and then something else will happen. It's this beautiful co-creation between ourselves and God and the universe.
Mm.
And again, there's a deeper sense of fulfillment. It's not easy. It could be difficult, very difficult. But for me, there's a deeper sense of fulfillment despite if I'm not happy.
Okay. Wow. Speaking of difficulty,
Yeah.
I would associate that as with pain, not only physical, but also psychological pain. And I feel that nowadays we live in a society which is so oriented towards running away from pain instead of trying to understand it, to integrate it in our life. And what happens when we treat pain like a problem to erase instead of like a message to decode?
Beautiful. I'm very passionate about this. So, I like to say, meaning isn't derived from the sedation of suffering. Meaning is derived from the suffering itself. And so I'm very passionate about the society that we currently live in that very much encourages the sedation through medication for anxiety, depression, etc.
And I don't think only with medication, but with all these distractions.
Alcohol, drugs,
yes,
promiscuity, parties.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's I feel like a very societally accepted, not all countries, obviously, we're in the UAE. I feel like it's quite different here, but I can use Australia from where I'm from. It's escapism is very accepted within society in a very unconscious way.
And even encouraged.
Yes, very much. Yes, there's the peer pressure and things that happen through that. I come from a standpoint of being very curious rather than judgmental of that. Because in my experience in growing up in Australia, I mean, that's just the way that we lived. We'd start drinking in our teenage years. Even in corporate, they give you Friday drinks in the afternoon, right? Oh, I'm so tired from work, let me drink.
Yeah.
And, there was a lot of promiscuity that went on there as well. And I feel like it's a very unconscious way at living our life that if you don't have the awareness, it makes sense to me because I've been there. I understand what it is to work a job that I'm unfulfilled in, but very anxious and depressed around the week, across the week, and then get to like a Friday drinks and be like, okay, like this is the fun part, right? So I have a lot of patience and compassion for that behavior because I know I've experienced that. I know what that feels like. But in terms of being able to really confront our pain, it's just not something that I've experienced in growing up that we're taught. If you're not in the self-development spaces, it's not something that people think about. And so they're at a very humane and human and primal level, just doing what they have discovered as a coping mechanism to be able to sedate or lower the sense of depression, anxiety, or unfulfillment that they're experiencing, or that's even that sense of emptiness.
And get these dopamine spikes.
Yes. But again, it's like that's such a elevated way of knowing things, right? Because if you're not in the self-development space, you're not thinking, hey, I'm going out to do escapist acts and this is a coping mechanism and I'm experiencing dopamine hits and it's I don't feel good and I want to feel different, or I want to numb or avoid or distract.
I think as the past generations were also not so much taught about this stuff.
Yes.
So they didn't know. So of course they passed
Exactly.
it on
Precisely.
and teach the children the best way they knew.
Absolutely. Exactly. It's very ingrained in society and in a lot of the culture. And so this is the thing, if you're sort of not in these spaces, you don't quite understand that there's something wrong, because I feel like you come to kind of normalize not feeling well. And so in coming back to being able to confront our pain, I think the first step is the awareness piece, because otherwise you don't know what you don't know. And I love the idea of like, you don't know what you don't know, and also you don't know what knows you. And that's the subconscious and unconscious aspects in which we live. And that's what I'm very passionate about in working in my mentorship. So awareness is the first piece, because then at least we have the understanding and choice to be able to say, well, do I want to continue to live like that? Or possibly there is another way. And the other way that you're speaking to, which I'm very passionate about, is being able to face our pain. Facing our pain means facing ourselves. And I think that that is one of the most difficult things that we can do in our life.
I think it's very difficult to be able to sit in front of a mirror, metaphorically, and look at yourself and at your darkest corners and edges, which might be very sharp.
Always.
Yes.
And that's the understanding, is that, and this is where I have a lot of compassion, is in understanding that every single person that is in your life that you meet, everyone, we all have those sharp edges. We all have those things we don't want to face. It's going back to, it's the process of I call it the savage undoing of life, in being able to understand that the process of life is that. It's not like we get to necessarily a point, unless, your goal is enlightenment. But for most of us, this is something that we will be doing for the rest of our lives. And so in coming to face yourself and the darkness of who you are at times, it requires courage and bravery. But the way in which I like to simplify it is to truly understand that the thing in which you fear is just a feeling. It's just a feeling. It's just a sensation. When we fear something, we're not necessarily fearing the thing. We're fearing the feeling and the sensation that is the consequence of that. And so when we begin to really simplify and understand, wow, it's just a feeling, and be able to start connecting with ourselves, and this is where that body element comes in, of being able to do a bit more of that somatic work, of being able to just sit with it, we begin to understand that if you sit with it long enough in a very conscious and intentional way, it begins to transmute and alchemize. And there may be grief that comes up, frustration, anger. There are a lot of emotions that can come through that transmutation and alchemy. But it is the processing itself that allows you to become a more true version of who you are.
And integrate also these dark parts.
Yes.
Into who you are.
Absolutely. And that's why curiosity.
Like shadow work.
It's shadow work. And that's why curiosity is so important, because I feel like there is so much judgment in our society. And I honestly laugh at it, because I'm just like, who are you to judge that person, when I know that if I was a fly on the wall for just a little bit of your life, I would find many things. And so I like to bring that sense of curiosity. And I think that's why I magnetize quite well the clients into my life, because they feel that. They know that they can come to me with the deepest and darkest and depths of their secrets and come to me and speak them out loud. And I can sit there and hold that space and get curious about it. And that's going back to the coping mechanisms that we speak to, that most of this darkness is just because we've learned to handle things in a very unconscious way. And when you bring consciousness to that, it may not align with the values and virtues that you hold for yourself. And there can be deep pain and conflict within self that can come with the awareness piece. But if we're able to be able to bring that sense of curiosity and compassion and self-forgiveness within ourselves, that's true power. Because the more that you're able to process and alleviate yourself from the suppression of all of this, I believe the healthier you are as well. And I think a lot of these autoimmune conditions that are going around at the moment are just purely a suppression of self. And I think if we're able to start moving some of that energy that we continually depress down because we're too afraid to be able to face it, this is why a lot of us get sick. And so I think that as much as mentally, it's a beautiful result to be able to feel more true to you and be able to process that. I've experienced in my life as someone that has had autoimmune conditions in the past, that I have a deeper sense of vitality and clarity and just pure health in my life because I've been able to start working through some of that stuff that maybe in the past I suppressed.
And I think it's important to realize and accept the duality of life.
Yeah.
It cannot be only positive.
Mm-hmm.
There
Beautiful.
is also the negative part, and they come together as a package, and we just need to accept that and integrate it in our lives.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was writing a piece recently. I'm thinking about doing a podcast and sort of speaking some of my written pieces. I love to write, and I was saying this exact thing, that I feel like duality is at the core of our suffering. But for us to know light, we need to know dark. And for us to know anything that we value, we've had to know its opposite. And so I think there is beautiful grounding and peace that can come with the understanding of that is a part of life. And as much as it can hurt because it doesn't necessarily align with societal ideals, that is life. It has its duality, and we only know one from the other. And the more that we can accept and make friends with that, I feel like the more that we can be in power and control of our life, because we begin to understand the natural laws of how the universe works.
And we were speaking about this hedonistic approach of life and how society is wired in a way that is promoting more and more this instant gratification and distractions. And I feel that beside influencing the relationship with yourself, it influences also the relationship with others. And I feel like many people nowadays are afraid to create this emotional intimacy with someone. Do you think that has to do with the fact that by creating a space of emotional intimacy, they would actually have to face their own selves as well, and to face that emotional rupture or emotional void that they carry in themselves, and that makes this space of intimacy hard to cope with or scary?
Yeah, of course. It's so vulnerable. Intimacy is so vulnerable. And I think that's, I believe most of us have those stories of how we meet this person and they're so amazing. And then 3 months later, you're like, who are you? And who am I? And we're both not who we presented ourselves
like what happened on the way? Like, we're just very confused. And you're just like, what's going on?
It's very vulnerable because, and this goes back to building that metaphorical backbone within ourselves and living that sense of truth. And I feel, I feel this really within me at the moment, is the strength that can come from that. Because I know in relationships I was in when I was younger, I would, particularly for people that are highly empathetic and we describe ourselves as chameleons, we're very good at adapting ourselves. And so, I knew how to adapt myself to be able to be the version of who this person wanted me to be.
Exactly.
It never ends well. It never ends well for either party. And again, coming back to that own sense of truth, what I'm really leaning into, because I'm a single woman and so I will be dating, is being able to catch myself where I'm like, I feel like the person would prefer this way rather than this way, and be able to stay in my own, knowing that person's preference would not be this part of my, and really being able to sit with that. And so I think in terms of vulnerability, of intimacy, is, again, as I said, it's not about the other person. It's about your connection with yourself. It always starts here. And if you're not willing to do the work, your relationships are going to be so difficult because you don't truly know who you are. You're living a life as the version of who you think they prefer rather than the version that is true to you. Very different way to live. And upon that and layered on that is also, if you're not living true to you, you're living in fear because you're fearing that sense of separation because you don't have connection with yourself. And what we don't understand is when we say we have a relationship, when we're living from that space of fear of separation and isolation, we are living in a reflection of our sense of fear of who they are rather than who that person is as well. Because we can't be present to who they are because we're conscious of the fear of separation versus the presence and intimacy and connection that can be built. And so we don't actually, not only are we not experiencing ourselves in an authentic way, but we're not seeing the other partner clearly because we are behaving in reaction to not wanting that sense of separation rather than truly getting to know them. And what happens through that fear is we tend to transfer our past experiences onto the present. And so it's just like, it's ludicrous that you actually think that you know this person when you don't know who you are and all you know is your relationship with fear with this person. And so I think that's where a lot of relationships go wrong, so to speak, is that's a mess. It really is. And it's very difficult. And I think that's why people begin to fear in this day and age because it's difficult and it's hard. And so I would always encourage, because I do work with couples as well, it's one of my favorite things to do. Is work with couples.
Isn't it more dramatic?
Again, it's the energy and presence that you bring, and I think because I bring that really beautiful, grounded, curious aspect. I'm not saying, because I see a lot of these podcasters at the moment, and maybe it's just for views and to go viral, but sometimes they just say the most general things, and I think, I understand there is a sense of generality that comes with having to speak to a mass audience, but also relationships are so nuanced. People are so nuanced.
Yes.
And I don't believe that there's a true right or wrong. Going back to duality, if there's a positive, there's a negative. And so I think that it doesn't make sense for me to think that this person's wrong and this person has to change. Okay, what is the situation that we have here? And what is your goal? And how do we work towards that in a sense that feels true to both of you? And what I've found is the work becomes not about each other, it becomes about themselves. And by virtue of that, as a beautiful consequence of that, they come together. Because they're being able to be true to them and be able to be present to themselves, which makes them more present to each other. It's gorgeous work.
Yes. Gorgeous way to come towards our end of the podcast. I feel like the way you spoke and some words that you were choosing today were really speaking to my soul.
Beautiful.
I really felt like I needed to hear this.
I could see it in your eye. There was a couple of moments I was like, that she was thinking about something.
Yes. And I'm sure you, as a highly intuitive person and with your experience in this area, I'm sure you could sense me.
Good.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for your very thoughtful questions. I was saying to you before we pressed record that I felt that about you, and I have a deep level of appreciation for that sense of care and thoughtfulness in an experience like this. So thank you. And I feel like the questions really brought out a very pure aspect. I really appreciate.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.